To avoid a war between the two species, a street kid joins a weakling dragon on a journey to find dragon heaven. Today we're going to recap the story of the 2020 movie, Dragon Rider. After several centuries of living with the dragons, the humans got greedy and began to spread across the world, declaring war and taking over the winged creature's territory. To help in the fight, an alchemist created a dragon-eating beast, Nettlebrand the Golden. Completely uncontrollable, the creature devoured the alchemist and went on to hunt dragons all over the world, taking advantage of his immunity to fire to devour them. With no way of defending themselves, the winged creature spread across the world and hid in places where no one could get to them, forcing Nettlebrand to stay in the castle waiting for his prey to reappear. Several centuries later, dragons became legends and humans continued to spread across the world, which put them on a collision course with the winged creatures once again. Unaware that the men are coming, a group of dragons led by Bottleneck live hidden in the mountains. Despite being the leader's son, Firedrake is a silver dragon who can't breathe fire and dreams of a world where his kind can live freely. Whenever he can, the young dragon goes to talk to Slatebeard, a bumbling old dragon who always talks about the Rim of Heaven, the dragon's paradise, where they can be free and live in peace. Excited by the idea of visiting this place, Firedrake meets Sorrel and starts talking about the possibilities when he hears a loud sound nearby. When they get closer to the noise, they see that human machines are working in the area and tell the rest of the species, forcing everyone to get together to decide what to do. While the other dragons want to go to war to protect their territory, Bottleneck suggests they move to the hideout in the valley and wait for the humans to leave. Wanting his kind to be able to live in peace, Firedrake remembers the Rim of Heaven and offers to find the place, saying that if he makes it back in time, he'll be able to get everyone there safely, but Sorrel thinks it's a bad idea and tries to discourage her friend, going home straight away. During the night, Firedrake can't sleep and decides to sneak out at dawn, only to be surprised by his friend, who rides on his back to leave together. With the mission of preventing a confrontation between humans and dragons, the two start flying and almost get hit by a commercial airplane. When he manages to stabilize his flight, Firedrake sees a city in the distance and suggests they go there, but Sorrel says that's where humans live and that's why it's dangerous. Even so, the dragon insists that they can get clues about the Rim of Heaven and decides to fly into the middle of the city. Just below, a street kid called Ben goes into a jewelry store and steals a pearl necklace, but as he's leaving the store, he's surprised by the owner who starts chasing him. Taking advantage of the festival launch of the movie, How to Tame Your Dragon, Ben infiltrates the crowd and steals someone's costume, getting a disguise to escape. Nearby, Firedrake and Sorrel land near the port. As she is smaller and more like a common animal, the female asks the dragon to stay hidden and goes out into the city to investigate, leaving Firedrake alone right where Ben lives. Without suspecting what's going on, the boy arrives at the shed and is preparing to eat a pizza when he notices the dragon behind him. Thinking it's a fantasy, the boy starts looking for the opening and can't find it, finally realizing that it's real. Frightened, Ben approaches the window and Firedrake sees the movie poster right behind him, and thinking that he is the Dragon Knight on the banner, starts talking to him, asking for help to find the Rim of Heaven. As he doesn't know what he's talking about, Ben denies the request, but changes his mind as soon as the police arrive at the place looking for him. Even against Sorrel's wishes, Firedrake allows the human to ride on his back and together they take off from the city, but when he learns that they have to go to the other side of the world, Ben immediately gives up the idea and asks the dragon to drop him off at the nearest mountain. On the ground, Ben gets off Firedrake and starts walking back to town, until halfway there, he hears someone approaching and hides behind the rocks. Unaware of the boy's presence, three dwarves follow the trail and get closer and closer to Firedrake. Thinking that they are hunting him, Sorrel hides her friend in the bushes and tries to scare them away. As they continue on their way, the dwarves see Firedrake in the bushes and chat normally, until one of them turns away from the group with the excuse of having forgotten something in the mine. Alone, the dwarf rushes to the alchemist's castle to tell Nettlebrand about the appearance of a new silver dragon. Upon hearing this, the junk monster asks the dwarf to show him the way and sets off towards the mountain. Unaware of the approaching danger, Firedrake talks to the other dwarves about the Rim of Heaven and one of them says that, according to legend, this place is full of silver and will make this metal more valuable than gold. Hearing everything from behind the trees, Ben becomes interested in the treasure and changes his mind almost instantly, waiting for the dwarves to leave before he shows up and says he'll guide Firedrake to the Rim of Heaven. With the team formed, the dragon approaches the cliff and begins to observe the alchemist's castle from afar, not realizing that Nettlebrand is coming at him with all his might. While admiring the view, Firedrake sees that something big is making the trees sway and asks the other two to ride on his back, taking off just before Nettlebrand arrives. Furious at losing his prey, he summons a raven and orders the strange and tiny Twigleg to follow the trio, being responsible for passing on their location at all times. In the valley, everyone realizes that Firedrake and Sorrel have disappeared and assumes that they have been eliminated by the humans, causing Bottleneck to declare war between the two species. Unaware of anything happening, Firedrake's group continues to fly towards the horizon until they are hit by a sandstorm. Even though he's having trouble breathing, the silver dragon struggles to keep flying, but after so much effort, he ends up fainting and falls in the middle of the desert. Sometime later, Ben and Sorrel wake up alone and decide to look for Firedrake in a nearby ruin, finding him still unlit. While they are trying to wake him up, a basilisk appears and advances towards the group. Since he can't breathe fire, Firedrake even tries to protect them, but he can't do anything and Ben is swallowed up by the creature. Trying to help him, Sorrel jumps on the basilisk's back and spits the boy away. Taking advantage of the fact that the dragon is paralyzed with fear, the basilisk rushes at him and almost manages to devour all three of them, but at the last second, a mysterious man appears and places a mirror in front of the basilisk, causing him to be completely trapped by his reflection. Now that the situation is calmer, the man introduces himself as Professor Greenblood, a specialist in exotic creatures. When he finally calms down, Firedrake is upset that he got stuck in front of the basilisk and decides to leave the group, but Ben goes after him and does everything he can to console his friend, promising that he will stay by his side until they find the Rim of Heaven. With night approaching, Greenblood takes everyone to his camp and decides that he will help them find the Rim of Heaven, telling them that the place is on the peak of the Himalayas and taking out his map to show them the way. Since he doesn't know the exact location, Greenblood says that the Jinn with the 1,000 eyes can help and marks the position where he is, all while Twigleg listens behind the boxes. After everyone goes to sleep, Mad Doc checks on the basilisk and finds a lost newspaper under its wing, discovering from the headline that Ben has been lost since his parents perished in a car accident. Hiding in the camp, Twigleg calls Nettlebrand and tells him about the trio's plans to go to the Rim of Heaven. But he makes his boss worried by mentioning that they are heading in the direction of the Jinn with 1,000 eyes. Knowing that the creature can eliminate them, Nettlebrand decides that he will go there too and takes his submersible for the journey. The next morning, the professor wakes Ben up and asks him to help put the basilisk in the truck, handing over the piece of newspaper straight away. Pretending not to have read anything, the man says he needs someone to help with the booking and hands him his card, saying that his wife and daughters would love to meet him. While the humans are talking, Twigleg runs into Ben's backpack and hides their phone out, following the journey with them until they reach the Jinn. After flying in circles for several days, the trio decide to stop at a beach to rest, and while they are talking about what to do next, Sorrel ends up being captured by a giant hawk. After chasing for some time, they finally arrive at the nest, but Firedrake refuses to allow his friend to be served as a snack and finally awakens his powers. With that, the bird releases Sorrel and Firedrake dives in after her, saving her at the last second. Safely away, the trio are celebrating the fact that Firedrake has managed to spit fire when, in the distance, Sorrel sees the Jinns. Extremely close to their goal, the group begins to search for the magical being until they find it inside the exhaust of a beetle. After coming out of his lamp, the Jinn tells them that they can ask any question, but if they ask one that he has heard before, they will be eliminated. After a brief meeting, Firedrake decides to ask about the location of the Rim of Heaven and ends up being interrupted by Ben, who, finding it too obvious, asks the opposite question, asking the Jinn where the edge is not. Completely bugged, the creature says it will take forever and Ben asks him to answer one he's already heard. With no options left, the Jinn makes the boy levitate and enters his mind to show him the exact location of the Rim of Heave, but this leaves Ben mentally exhausted and causes him to go completely out of his mind. While his friend is trying to recover, Sorrel asks how they can get out of there and the Jinn immediately replies that he has heard this many times before, causing them to be attacked by the creature. Thinking he can finally spit fire, Firedrake goes in front of him, but as usual, nothing but sparks come out. Completely defenseless, the silver dragon begins to retreat, but before it can be hit, Nettlebrand appears and attacks the creature, starting a confrontation between the two villains. While they fight, Firedrake wonders why the fire hasn't gone out and comes to the conclusion that he can only spit fire with the dragon rider on his back. With no time to test, the silver dragon enters the middle of the two beasts and manages to catch Ben just as Nettlebrand defeats the Jinn, taking everyone away to safety. While they wait for the boy to regain his sanity, Sorrel looks at the professor map and notices that he has marked the location of a friend who specializes in dragons, suggesting that they go there for help. Thinking it was a good idea, Firedrake and Sorrel took the dragon rider across the ocean to India. As soon as they arrived, they are welcomed by the local people who begin to worship Ben, believing him to be the reincarnation of an ancient dragon-taming warrior. Believing that they are facing a legend, the people take the trio to the dragon expert, who, as soon as she discovers that they are looking for the Rim of Heaven, takes them to the temple of the Dragon Rider. There, the woman says that no one knows where this place is, as it is protected by a spell cast by Varing, the first dragon rider. After hiding the dragons there, the warrior set off across the world looking for more of the creatures in order to take them all to the Rim of Heaven, but Nettlebrand managed to track him down and stole the key to the seal, ending anyone's chances of reaching the place, including the other dragons. When he hears his master's name, Twigleg gives out a cry of fear that gives away his location to everyone. As soon as he discovers the homunculus, Sorel suggests that they get rid of it, and Twigleg says that he was only doing it to avoid being eaten, but that if they let him live, he can lose Nettlebrand. To prove he's telling the truth, the strange creature calls his boss and tries to convince him that they're approaching the North Pole. But just when Nettlebrand is buying it, one of the locals arrives to offer food and ends up tripping over Firedrake's tail, causing Twigleg to drop his cell phone and allowing the brass monster to see that everyone is in an Indian temple. Discovering that he has been betrayed, Nettlebrand promises to make everyone pay and takes his submersible straight to India. Knowing that he is approaching, Firedrake asks Ben about the Jinn's vision, and the boy says he doesn't remember it, but the expert manages to hypnotize him and makes him remember a mountain in the shape of a half-moon. As soon as she hears this, the woman says that this is the peak of the crown and marks the exact location on the map, but before they can leave, Nettlebrand's raven appears and steals the parchment. Even so, the expert believes that Varing's reincarnation is capable of finding the location and tells Ben to follow his heart. In the valley, the humans continue to advance with their machines and destroy more and more of the dragon's territory, prompting Bottleneck to summon his troops to battle. At the top of the Himalayas, the dragon rider guides Firedrake through the snowstorm until they reach the inside of a cave. While flying over the ice stalactites, Sorel sees that the Nettlebrand is behind them and asks Firedrake to speed up, passing the fast right next to falling blocks of ice. With the cave collapsing and the golden tiger right on his tail, Firedrake flies as fast as he can towards the exit, escaping being buried at the last second. Right behind them, Nettlebrand jumps across the ice and almost manages to catch them in midair, only for Firedrake to dodge in time, and he ends up falling off the cliff. Even so, the trio have not yet reached their goal and continue to follow Ben's instructions until they reach the staircase that leads to the Rim of Heaven. After opening a super heavy door, the group arrives at an empty temple and Firedrake is confused, thinking that this is the paradise of dragons. Ben says that's what he saw in his vision, and they begin to wonder what they missed, but are interrupted by the sounds of Nettlebrand, who has already woken up outside. When he hears the brass tiger approaching, Ben suggests running away and Firedrake refuses, saying he won't go until he finds the Rim of Heaven. Frightened, the dragon rider decides to set off alone and leaves his companions behind, but ends up meeting Nettlebrand on the way and has to hide behind a rock to survive. While sniffing, the rusty monster smells a homunculus and almost manages to find Ben because of it, but at the last second, the boy is saved by the dwarf, who points out Firedrake's footprints on the ground. Wanting to eat his meal, Nettlebrand ignores the smell and continues on his way to the temple, knocking over a giant gold plate on the way. As soon as he sees the object, the boy remembers that the prophecy talks about silver being worth more than gold and finally understands that this is talking about Firedrake and Nettlebrand. In the temple, the rusty scrap metal finally arrives and the flames immediately ignite, removing the rust and showing the beast's true golden body. Tired of running away, Firedrake appears in front of the enemy and tries to get to him, but receives a blow that throws him against the wall. Cornered, Firedrake tries to fly and the golden beast climbs the walls to throw its golden spikes at the dragon, narrowly missing. Just then, Ben arrives and tells him about the prophecy, but without a plan on how to defeat the enemy, Firedrake can't do anything and ends up trapped under Nettlebrand's paws. With the dragon defeated, the monster captures Ben and prepares to devour him. Seeing his friend about to be swallowed up, Firedrake once again turns white and tries to spit fire, but as Nettlebrand is holding his neck, he begins to inflate like a balloon. With so much pressure built up, the silver dragon finally manages to break free and unleashes a huge jet of blue flames at the enemy. Since it's not a normal fire, this new power is capable of hurting Nettlebrand, who burns until he melts into a puddle of liquid gold. Even after the victory, Firedrake is quite sad, thinking that the Rim of Heaven was just a legend, but at that moment, Sorel notices the seal key in Nettlebrand's remains and places it in the slot, causing the statues to activate and open the passage that leads to the dragon's paradise. With his goal completed, Firedrake sits down next to Ben and asks him where he's going now, but despite wanting to stay with the dragons, the boy decides to go back to the human world and stay with the Greenblood family. With that settled, Firedrake flies back to the valley and arrives in time to avoid the war, reuniting with his father and telling everyone about the Rim of Heaven. Without further confrontation, the group of dragons follows Firedrake and Sorel and thus manages to reach the long Rim of Heaven. With the dock gone, Ben sends the necklace and the gold scale to the jewelry store and starts living on the Professor Reservation, where he can finally have a family. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time. Targets.